Well, it's time, everybody, for another rousing edition of our Draft to Glory Goon Squad franchise right here on NHL 25. Also means it's a good time to kind of, talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, it's a good excuse to, at the very least. Our team, of course, did not make the playoffs last year, while I was, waxing poetically about the state of the Toronto Maple Leafs and after what happened to them at the hands of the Florida Panthers, what might be next for them. And hey, look at that. Rightfully so. Brendan Shanahan was fired. So we're starting off with a big thumbs up for Leafs fans there. Congratulations. The Shana plan has finally come to an end. Not to say that he did all bad. Like, I do agree with that sentiment, right? Of, hey, here was a team that was just in a really bad spot. I mean, before Shanahan arrived in 2012, 2013. I forget the exact date. I'll actually look it up so I don't feel so foolish, because there is a difference between arriving in 2012 and 2013, actually. It was 2014. Jesus. So they had already made the playoffs against the Bruins in 2013. So see, that's the interesting thing, actually, about Brendan Shanahan for me, right? Is you look at that whole transition, we'll say, from what the Leafs were previously. You have Randy Carlyle there, like the team's making the playoffs. Some good things are happening. They have Phil Kessel, like it's not atrocious. Like James Van Riemsdyk is there. Like they have some pieces, right? It's not bare bones, like, oh my God, he built this from the ground up. Like he did take a good little starting platform, built it up into something, solid. I mean, certainly in terms of like a perennial regular season, team to keep an eye on at the very least. Sorry, William. I'm kind of shitting on your now former boss here just a little bit. Well, at least one of your bosses. I guess point being is, I don't know, it feels unfair to not give Brendan Shanahan some credit, but also how much credit can you really give him? Like, yes, the team turned around. Yes, he started with at least some bits and pieces, right? So there's that. But no, they ultimately couldn't muster up anything beyond a, second round appearance, basically, which is crazy. I guess in my head, what I was mainly remembering is we have the 15th overall pick this year. You knew we wouldn't have any lottery luck. Was, thinking back to Shanahan's time in like the Department of Player Safety and everything, and having the videos that came out, which of course we don't get anymore, because why would George Peros or anybody associated with the DOPS make a video like that? And man, this would have been a great year for a top 5 pick. Like all but one player would have been an eligible guy for us. Damn. Anyway, Leafs fans, Shanahan's gone. I think it's a very good thing. The Shanahan plan didn't work. In theory, it was the right idea, but ultimately it didn't work. Completely agree with the takes of numerous people, but especially those that you see on the Steve Dangle podcast. Just the idea of like he owns this at the end of this, because they did not divert from the plan. They tried to brute force it, and eventually it just you fell flat on your face. Like you ran into the wall too damn hard trying to brute force it, and you fell flat on your face at the end of it. So it is good news for Leafs fans, but I am talking about the Leafs a lot because of what's going on in the Eastern Conference Finals so far, right? Not to say that the West isn't interesting, because it is, but we've only had, at least at the time of recording, one game in that series, right? And that, of course, was game 1 with Dallas pulling off another ridiculously late surge. Like, man, just the comeback efforts, the never say die attitude that they've showcased throughout this postseason. I mean, especially you think of Game 7 against Colorado. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And for Edmonton, it feels like yet again, like, oh, hey, all these shortcomings that you've had for a while continue to rear their ugly head, right? Like, you had the key players, Draisaitl, McDavid had an assist on 2 out of 3 goals. Nugent Hopkins had 2 points on the night. Bouchard with a goal. But then when all of a sudden they're not firing on all cylinders in that third period, Dallas just steamrolls them. Obviously, the goaltending is a factor as well, where Stuart Skinner just cannot decide what he's going to be on any given day. So there is, wow, it's pretty funny, though, to see the Utah Mammoth now, isn't it? That is pretty funny. Anyway, for Edmonton, Dallas, very interesting start to that series. Still a long way to go, right? I mean, no one will really be counting Edmonton out after one loss. As far as the Utah Mammoth are concerned, by the way, I don't hate the logo. I don't hate the look. I don't love it either. I do agree the logo looks kind of EASHL-ish. I do agree it would have been cool to see them, implement a little bit of purple and stuff like that. Be a bit more creative. It's fine. It's fine. I'm sure I'll learn to like it a little bit more, but for now, it's fine. We've had a lot to mention here in just a short amount of time, and I feel like there's so much more that I could have said in regards to Brendan Shanahan, but like I said, I spent so much time talking about the Leafs last time out that it just doesn't feel right, because there is another team now that deserves center stage in terms of their struggles. And that is, of course, the Carolina Hurricanes, as they are down 2-0. Hello, enforcer? There's no way. Offensive instincts? There's no way that guy's an enforcer. Might be worth the risk, though. Might be. Carolina making it to the conference final again, and they are now 0-14 in conference final games since 2006, when they won the Stanley Cup over Edmonton. One of the most ridiculous facts I think I've ever seen. Like, I don't know if you want to call it a stat. I guess it is, but just knowing that is the truth it's insane for a team that's been on the cusp of, making it to the finals, obviously in the conference finals, but just on the cusp of finally living up to their potential, right? Because they have been listed as a favorite to win the Stanley Cup for more than the past 5 years, really. Like, they were viewed as that next in line alongside the Colorado Avalanche as they were ascending, with the likes of McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen, and especially after, Cale Makar really started to pan out. They were viewed on that same level, and now here they are, down 2-0 to the Florida Panthers at the start of a series which has not been close. And a series in which they had home ice advantage. That is now just completely gone. It's funny because obviously you look back to Leafs and Panthers, and of course the Panthers were down 2-0 in that series. Also, there is nobody for us to draft here. Good Lord. So it's a good thing I have something else to talk about, because this draft class quality is miserable. Oh my God. Right. Who the hell are we even going to take here? Like, God damn, we got a lot of people that we just don't know anything about. I guess Shannon Butler, right wing. I mean, we got a couple of people. We'll take a look at them, I suppose. But, you look at the start of this series for Carolina, outscored 10-2 over that time. And again, like, you don't want to say, never say never, right? Like, the Carolina Hurricanes, could they come back and win the series? Yes, they are a really good team. But at the same time, can I say that the people who are saying that this is just the level that the Hurricanes are at, they are good enough to make the conference finals, but not good enough to make a true run towards winning a Stanley Cup, I can't necessarily say those people are wrong at this point based off of what we have seen. And the Panthers, I talked about it last episode, right? They are so perfectly built. It's insane. And, well, at least Shannon Butler's a medium 6. We got that going for us. No abilities. It's about the best we could have done there. Shame that's a 15th overall pick, apparently. Yeah, the Florida Panthers are just built so perfectly at this point in time. It's insane. I glazed Bill Zito enough last time out, of course. Hello, Tom Emmerich? Passing ability is good. I don't believe that guy is actually going to be decent enough. And there's a couple of people here where maybe they're worth the risk, but god damn. Yeah, I glazed Bill Zito enough, and I'm sorry I keep getting kind of distracted between the two different thoughts and conversations, right? but La Liberté, ooh, he could be decent. You know what? Let's focus on this draft here for a second. I'll get back to the conversation that was. There is a medium elite grinder, but he's 20. Nikolai Nichushkin. I might not have a choice but to take that guy. Mateo Hodgson. What the fuck was Mateo? Oh, he's down at the bottom. What the hell? Show me Sean Merricks. Remember when I said, like, franchise mode? I don't hate it, but it's gotten worse throughout the year, and it's weird, and it's slow, and it's just like, oh, come on. This game was so much better than this at the start of the year. It still wasn't amazing, but it was better at the start of the year. We actually have plenty of options to draft here in this round. I think we are going to go back to the top, though. Let's take the guarantee. I mean, the guy's old, but we'll take the overager. Yeah, he's a 57. I mean, you never know. Maybe with like prospect development, we might be able to do something. But I digress. In regards to the Hurricanes, again, you don't put it past them that they could come back in this series, right? But this feels very similar to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, very, very similar in terms of, now granted, it's a round further than the Leafs have made it, including this year, but now really feels like the time of like, man, if you still, you know, okay, Florida's great, whatever. If you still can't make your way to the Cup final, something's got to change, right? Like, I mean, I guess you could take the approach of you just keep banging your head against the wall, similar to the Shanahan plan. See, it all connects. Or you do what other teams have done, including the Florida Panthers, and saying, okay, this is our level with this situation and this setup. Let's try, right? Like, okay, we have a good level here and now, but we might need a little bit of luck to make it to where we want to make it. Let's try to be proactive in solving the situation and do what we have to do. Hey, South Korean. There's no way he's going to be eligible for us, though. You know, be proactive. Make the changes you need to make to get to the level that you want to be at, right? We've seen other teams do it. Again, I mentioned Florida. And will Carolina do it? And the thing is, it kind of then comes down to the question of like, well, what is that thing then? And you know, the team president situation isn't the same in regards to like, well, Brendan Shanahan having, you know, that situation and having changed, you know, GMs and coaches a bunch over the last decade, right? Like that wasn't a factor at all. The biggest thing that Carolina could change, the quickest thing that they could change, is moving on from Rod Brind'Amour. And after these two games, and granted, you know, we're looking at a reactionary response from the Hurricanes fan base, but off of the back of these two games, there are some very unhappy people in regards to the job that Rod Brind'Amour is doing or what he is not doing. And again, that's one of those moves, right? Because everybody knows if Rod Brind'Amour gets fired, he immediately gets signed by somebody else. Guarantee. Absolutely a guarantee. Let's just draft this dude because he's huge, I guess. Why not? I don't think we're going to get too much else in this draft. Anyway. And again, it's Rod Brind'Amour. He is, you know, one of the most well-respected. I would still say one of the best coaches in the league, but everybody in regards to head coaching in sports has an expiration date, right? Like eventually you hit that point where it's just like, okay, this isn't working anymore. The team needs a change. You need a change. Let's do something here. If Carolina loses this series, is that the impetus then for one of those big changes? And it could be. I mean, you know, you'd be talking about for the third time, you know, Rod Brind'Amour and the Carolina Hurricanes make it to the conference final and lose. God forbid they get swept again, which could happen. You know, you can't blame him for the 2009. I think it was the 2009 loss. Nope, it wasn't. Yes, it was, because the Bruins lost to Carolina that year. Shout out to Scott Walker, you bastard. You diving, thieving bastard. But that said, I just think it's so fascinating from the outside looking in. And that's been the fun part of this postseason for me as a complete neutral, where, again, a lot of people go, oh, the Bruins suck, so you're not interested in hockey as much anymore. It's like, no, I am watching every single playoff game that I possibly can, and I'm having a blast because I get to see these things that are going on with these teams and say to myself, well, it's not the situation my team's in. And trust me, my team's in a situation. Don Sweeney just re-signed for 2 more years. I can touch up on that in a second. But I guess in conclusion, or maybe not so much, conclusion to Brendan Shanahan. I think I'm done finally mentioning him today. But when it comes to this series, again, like Carolina could come back. Of course they could. But with how good Florida is, do you trust Carolina to be able to come back? With how Carolina's lost, and that's the other element to this, right? Something else that a lot of people have talked about. I completely agree with the conversation. It's not necessarily about losing. It's about how you're losing, right? The Toronto Maple Leafs would have been in a situation where they needed to make a change here. I said I thought I was done talking about Shanny. They were going to be in that situation regardless of needing to do something. And honestly, that something was going to happen to them anyway because Mitch Marner was leaving pretty much no matter what, right? I mean, even if they won the cup, Mitch Marner is still out the door. No denying that. But it's how the Leafs lost, right? Like you look at that series and it's not just that they lost, it's that they got destroyed in games 5 and 7 at home, outscored, what was it, 12-1, 12-2 in total. It just, again, an absolute ass kicking, right? So you look at it from that perspective, and then you see Carolina here. Now, I know a lot of Leafs fans are like, Leafs beat Florida 3 times. Carolina might get swept again. What would have happened if the Leafs had won? And, we'll never know. But that said, Carolina could have very well done a better job against Toronto to start the series. It's just that the Florida Panthers are this completely different beast. They are, again, so perfectly crafted for the style of play that they want to have come playoff time. If Carolina fights back in this series, they make it close, ultimately lose. I don't know if you do see that big change. But if they go through this series and it only lasts 2 more games, the noise, as they say up north, but the noise surrounding Rod Brind'Amour and his job security is going to amplify significantly. It already has. I do not know if that thunder outside is picking up on the mic. Here's hoping I don't lose. I might have to cut this short, by the way. Here's hoping I don't lose power or anything like that while trying to record this. But anyway, you get what I'm saying at this point, right? Like, it's been an unbelievable start for the Florida Panthers in this postseason. And I say start because, I mean, they're, a little bit over now, 50% of the way through, right? They are 6 wins away from the Stanley Cup, which is crazy. Again, it could be their 3rd straight Stanley Cup final. It could be back-to-back Stanley Cups for the Florida Panthers. That still just blows my mind that organization was able to do what they needed to do to finally get that team to a decent level. But the story right now, honestly, it feels more about what Carolina's not doing as opposed to what Florida is doing. Is that fair or not? I don't know. Maybe. But, I mean, it's certainly my focus, right? Because I expect this greatness out of the Florida Panthers at this point. But I do not expect this level of poor play. And that's the only way to deem it. Like, I have had no expectations that Carolina would look like pushovers through the first 2 games of the series. And again, they have been outscored 10-2, shut out in game 2, again, at home, to the point where you have the fans in Raleigh chanting, shoot the puck. I mean, trust me, I've been to NHL games. Like, I'm not, stunned by the fact of people yelling, shoot. But at the Carolina Hurricanes in the playoffs, at home, like, you see what I mean? It's surprising, right? Like, Dallas coming back and beating Edmonton, it's crazy, but it's not exactly surprising. The Leafs losing to the Florida Panthers, it's not surprising, right? It's like almost disappointing to see how meh they were, as I stop this just in time to do some off-season focus stuff. We'll see if I'm able to get through this, of course. But again, like Carolina looking this human is just insane to me. And again, it's another reason why the playoffs have been so fun, right? I've been able to talk about the teams that are out of the playoffs, whether it was a team that was in the playoffs and eliminated. I've been able to talk about the teams that are in the postseason. And now I even have a chance to talk about teams that didn't make the playoffs at all, in the form of the Boston Bruins, with Don Sweeney getting a 2-year extension, which is, of course, the least surprising thing of all time. Like, really, it is. Of course he was staying, right? The Bruins, maybe above any other organization, love the boys club mentality. They do. Cam Neely as team president, of another former player as GM with Don Sweeney. Like, they love that. I would not be surprised if Marco Sturm ends up being the new head coach, which I got to be honest, I'd be down with. I am certainly way more in favor of first-time coaches getting a chance at the NHL level than what some of these other teams are doing. You can now include Chicago, bringing in Jeff Blashill, where it's like, I mean, okay, you can kind of bank on, well, maybe it was just a bad fit and he learned some lessons this time. Like, you can bank on that, but at the same time, like, there would be plenty of, fresh blood, of new blood that you could bring in, whether it be from the AHL, the NCAA, or God forbid, Europe. There's only been, 3 European or at least non-North American head coaches in NHL history. Like, you can't tell me that sometimes one of these other options is better than just going with, the same guy. Like, with respect to somebody like John Hines, who's now on, his 3rd NHL team, Minnesota, New Jersey, Nashville, like, it's one of those type of things where it's like, is he really the best option, or is there somebody else out there who actually deserves that chance? I'm hoping for the Bruins that they at least do something interesting with the head coaching position, because it was very, very obvious that they were not going to do anything interesting when it came to team president and GM, which, similar to the Leafs, I suppose, you could argue that would have been the best course of action, would be to take a major change like that, but it doesn't surprise me. Obviously, now you get the conversation of, well, okay, you got to trust Don Sweeney to draft properly here. That's scary, isn't it? And yeah, a little bit, right? A little bit. But at the same time, I don't know. Like, they still have David Pasternak, and the idea of trying to build up to be the big bad Bruins again, maybe it's not the worst idea. Again, at the very least, it's not surprising, right? Because look at how the Florida Panthers play hockey in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That is a very historically Bruins or Philadelphia Flyer style of hockey. It just is. Which, i.e., just means physical hockey, right? But those two teams in particular love to brand it as our brand of hockey. It's just super physical hockey, right? I don't know. It's interesting to me that I'm way more excited to talk about, like, oh man, like even Dallas Edmonton, even though I didn't say much about it, or talking about what's next for the Leafs after losing to Florida and firing Brendan Shanahan, talking about the greatness of the Florida Panthers, talking about the potential crisis. I mean, let's be honest, it's a crisis right now that the Carolina Hurricanes are facing. And that idea of, oh my God, like, if we blow this again, what the hell do we do? Because they're going to have to answer those questions. It's way more interesting to talk about that. And maybe it's just because the teams have been playing in the past week and they're more relevant, as opposed to the Bruins, who from before the trade deadline, you knew weren't going to make the playoffs. And then at the trade deadline, they sell and all of that, right? So, I don't know. It's just, I'm not surprised Don Sweeney stayed. They're going to try to build the team up probably in a very similar way. Like, I don't think you're going to see them with, the 7th overall pick, the 8th overall pick. I don't think you're going to see them look to take a high-skill guy, or at least not like a super high-skill, like skill-first type of player. you're going to see them take someone who's defensively responsible as a forward. You're going to see them take a really physical player. Like, I just don't see them pivoting away from that. Why would I? What reason would I have to believe that, given that, Don Sweeney's now been the GM of this team for a decade? What reason would any Bruins fan have to believe that there might be a change in the tactical approach and the philosophies? It's just not going to happen. They are what they are. So it's just not the most interesting conversation to have. But anyway, like I said, I might have to call things here a little bit early just so that I don't lose this file in case I lose power from this freaking thunderstorm that's coming in. But I think I covered everything that I wanted to mention. And if not, hey, we'll figure it out, right? We'll figure it out. But I think you get the gist. So what I will do is finish up all of this. We'll be in the preseason at the start of the next video, and I will bid you all adieu for now. Enjoy the hockey, and if you are a fan of the Leafs, be happy. If you're a fan of the Stars, be happy. If you're a fan of the Oilers, be a little bit nervous. A little bit. They could win the series in 5 games, but be a little bit nervous. The warning signs are there, but the high-end skill might be enough to get you through. If you're a Florida Panthers fan, I mean, you're just loving life, right? I mean, this is beyond your wildest dreams. And if you're a fan of the Carolina Hurricanes, I don't know what to tell you right now. I don't know what to tell you, but there's nothing I can say that'll make you feel better right now. There just isn't. And if you're a fan of the Boston Bruins, hey, at least you root for the right team.